Hey, Ronnie Dale for Wheeling Australia. Nice soggy day in WA, standing here in the rain. I'm going to give you, in this video, 10 most likely ways of damaging or snapping your driveline. Now, I recently had to fix my front diff center because I sheared 4 teeth off it. And I figured, why not share all the ways you can damage it to help you guys prevent from doing it yourself. So I'm not only going to give you the 10 most likely ways, I'm going to help prevent you from doing the same mistakes. Now, I've pretty much snapped everything you can in a driveline except for the rear diff center. Not all on this vehicle, across the vehicles that I've owned. So stay tuned and we'll get into the top 10. First way of breaking your driveline is a pretty common one actually, and that's when people smash the accelerator to the ground, really put the power through the wheels. You pop your wheels up in the air, they are spinning really fast, and then they come down and contact the ground. That is the perfect way to snap a CV, or also the front center of your differential, or even an axle. Just take care if you're climbing a hill like that. Look, in sand you can probably get away with it most of the time because the surface will just move, you'll just dig the sand out, that's fine. However, you still can do it. It just depends how much shock load you put on your vehicle. If it's in low range, you are multiplying that shock load pretty high. So just be aware of that. Now, there are a few ways of preventing this, and one is to time the dune or the hill a lot better and just throttle off when you hit the top, and perhaps use your lockers if you have them and drive up slow. That's another way of doing it. But hey, if you need speed, you need to go up. Some people actually dump the clutch before they hit the ground, and that can actually help prevent it as well, but I prefer not to do that. In case you don't make it up, you may slide back down. Next one is being stuck and not knowing why you are stuck. Half the time, the reason why you're stuck is because your tires are sunk down, you're sitting on your chassis. That's one way of being stuck. You have no traction. But the other way of being stuck is you're hung up on something and you have traction to all 4 wheels, 3 wheels, 2 wheels, doesn't matter. If you have traction somewhere and you're trying to force it and the vehicle's bouncing up and down, spinning wheels, that is a sure way to break your driveline. So be very mindful of that. If you're stuck and you don't know why you're stuck, get out, have a look, get a spotter to tell you why you're stuck, check everything. Come back a bit. I'm bellied out on something. Because if you keep trying to force it, if it doesn't break now, it may break later, or it will break later. So how do you prevent this? Well, like I said, you get out, you have a look, you figure out why you were stuck. Maybe you just need to put some max tracks on the front or some track building, a couple of rocks, bit of wood, maybe you need to winch a little bit, maybe there's something you need to move around. Just figure out what it is that's holding you up and you shouldn't break anything. One other thing a lot of people don't realise, your gearing in your vehicle, in your diff, your differentials, the teeth are cut in a direction. They're built for going forward. They're not built for going backwards. So your gears are strongest going forwards. When you reverse, that is the weaker side of the teeth, the weaker way it's cut. Engineered to go forward, not reverse. So never ever do strenuous driving, reversing up a hill or something silly like that. When you're bogged as well, don't give it too much in reverse. Just be mindful of it, that the teeth are actually cut to go forward. And the main reason why people bust their front diffs during recoveries is doing this. But obviously I didn't have it hooked up because I don't want to break my driveline again, but reverse recovery is not a good idea. You're putting a lot of stress, a lot of shock load on your driving gear. So when you are reverse recovering someone, you're putting your vehicle at risk. Turn around, drive forward to pull them out. Don't do the other way around. It's fine to use it as an anchor point, your vehicle facing the other way, but do not put it in reverse and drive and put all the force and torque through your drivetrain in reverse, because those gears are not cut that way. Driving too hard. Now this one probably sounds pretty obvious to most people, but not to all. If you're too jerky, too sharp on the accelerator, too sharp on the brakes, that really loads up your driveline. And when you think about it, low range, it multiplies the torque and the force going through the driveline up into your diff centers, And then the diff centers, in my case, they're 4:1. So you're multiplying it again. And all that torque and force is then being transferred out. And this is where you will wear things down. Now you probably won't break it now, but you will weaken it and you'll break it later. So just drive to conditions. That is the best way to prevent this. Don't be too hard on the accelerator, don't be too hard on the brakes, and don't be too jerky driving. If you're driving up a hill, pick the right line. Use your lockers if you have them. If you don't have them, well, that's when picking the right line is really crucial. The CV angles. There are two ways a CV angle can be bad. One of them is, and this applies to solid axle vehicles and IFS vehicles because there's a difference. However, this one applies to both. If you are full locked to the left or the right, it doesn't matter which way, and you are stuck, and you have it full locked, you're trying to get out sideways or whatnot, don't do it, because your CV is at the weakest angle or the weakest point it can be. You need to have your wheels at least slightly turned back. Never go full lock when you're stuck trying to get out, because that's where you'll smash your CV, or you'll crunch it, you'll rip it apart on the inside. The other one is specifically for IFS vehicles. This does not apply to solid axle vehicles. When you lift a four-wheel drive, it goes up. The angles become more on an IFS vehicle. Independent front suspension is what I'm talking about, the wishbones. On a solid axle vehicle, it doesn't matter. You can lift it to 10 inches high, the axle is still straight. However, on an IFS vehicle, the wishbones come down. So the more you lift it, the more angle you're going to get, and it's the same principle. It's the angle. It's going to bring your CV to the weakest point possible, and that is where things are going to go wrong. So how do you prevent an IFS vehicle from having too much of an angle if you want to lift it higher? Well, there are two ways. One, don't lift it higher. Keep it at 2 inches. 2 inches is generally all right across the board for most IFS vehicles. You can push it to 2.5 inches, but I'll stick to 2. If you do want to go high on your lift, you can get what's called a drop-down kit. What that does is it relocates your differential down lower, and this will bring the CVs at a better angle. Now, for a 3-inch vehicle and above, that's where the problem starts. So a 3-inch vehicle is not too bad to lower the diff down. If you go to 4 or 5-inch, you're kind of pushing your luck there. You're really going to need a big relocation kit, and we're talking a whole different ball game with all the components that are involved to make this work. So I would stick to 2 inches. Using your diff lockers wrong. And how can you use your diff lockers wrong? Well, there's a very obvious way. Say you're on solid surface, rock, there is no rain like there is today, it's dry, no tyre has a chance to slip, which means that all that binding up, all that stress from your driveline, when you're turning, is all going to bind up inside it. It can't release it anywhere until you lift the wheel or something like that. You may have seen before a vehicle driving on some rocks and it lifts the wheel, and that wheel just all of a sudden just takes off, it spins. That is releasing a lot of wound up energy that's in the driveline. If you have lockers on, you are multiplying that and you are locking it all in. So you are locking 25% to all wheels, and that is where you really bind things up. And it may not break now, but it will break later. So that is creating a lot of stress on your vehicle. So how do you prevent this? Well, on solid surface where you are turning, don't use lockers. Unlock your diffs. If you are going up a rocky, steppy hill where you do need your lockers for traction, then of course use them. When you're turning on a solid surface, your outside wheel wants to do more rotations than your inside wheel, and it can't do that. So that is where all this bound up energy gets created, and something's got to give. Another way of using lockers wrong is powering your vehicle too hard. Just because you've locked all your wheels doesn't mean that you should be giving it more throttle. You should actually be giving it less throttle, because there is no energy can escape anywhere, as I explained before with the solid surface and your turning. All your energy is locked in, all your torque is locked in. Treat it with care and your vehicle shouldn't break. Another way you can blow your diff, or your locker for that matter, is if you are going too fast, you are wheel spinning, and then you decide to activate your locker. try not to activate your locker while you're moving. Or if you are moving, make sure it's slow. Try and activate it when you're sitting still. I know sometimes you are in the middle of doing something and you got to lock it. Just make sure you're not spinning wheels and you're putting a lot of power through the diff. Four-wheel drive and tarmac. Now some people swear by four-wheel drive in these kind of rainy conditions on the highway, and you can probably get away with it. It's not going to cause too much bind up. However, if it's dry and you're in four-wheel drive on a tarmac, you shouldn't do it because it'll bind up your drive line and something will eventually go. If it doesn't go now, it'll go some other time. So why would you be in four-wheel drive on a highway in the first place? Well, say you aired up, you're too busy airing up, worrying about other things, you hopped in your car and off you drove. Now, a few people do that. I've done it before. You end up looking down your dash, or you can feel your steering getting heavy, and then you look down your dash and you realise it's still in four-wheel drive. What do? Well, the first thing you got to do is slow down, make sure there's no one behind you for a start, and then look for a soft shoulder or a shoulder of the road where you can take half your vehicle off the actual road, because that'll release the energy through that side. It'll help it, it'll assist it release the wind up. If possible, get the whole vehicle off the side of the road. But don't just stop. Try and drive a bit and then take it out of full drive. If you can't take it out of full drive, that means it's wound up. There's something binding up. So you need to release that energy first. The best way to do it is obviously to get off the solid surface and then try and release it. So how do we prevent this from happening? Well, if you're in a convoy of people, time to hit the open road. Oh, still in full drive. Just click that out. Just checking if you guys are out of full drive.
Yep, all out here. Yeah, all good. Roger that.
Copy that. 1 out of 10 times you'll catch someone, sometimes even yourself. You realise you're in full drive, just quickly drive off the side of the road, disengage full drive, off you go again. That is the best way to do it. One of the other common causes of your driveline failing while you're four-wheeling is having weak points in your driveline, and that is due to not having it checked or not having it maintained and not actually having a good look underneath and seeing where there might be some damage. For example, if you have a significant dent into your drive shaft, especially the rear one because they're so long, that under severe torque and stress can actually twist. It creates a weak point on it. CV boots on IFS vehicles, if you don't get in and check those out, there could be a little pinhole in it. A pinhole is all that there is needed to be to get moisture in there from a puddle, and that can contaminate the grease, thus creating a weak point in your driveline. Contaminants in your diff oil can also lead to premature wear and eventually destruction. If you don't flush them out, you don't check them regularly, if you have water in there, it's just gonna cause early wear. So how do we prevent this? Well, the best way you can help prevent this is after you've been four-wheeling or during your trip, if it's a longer trip, get underneath your vehicle, check things out, especially IFS boots, because they are so easy to pierce a hole into. So if you do have a pierced hole in your CV boot, don't just ignore it. Wrap some plastic around it and put some duct tape around it. That'll get you home, and that'll get it to a mechanic where you can get a new boot on it and you don't have to replace the whole CV. So you can save things yourself. Also, if you know you have a significant dent in your drive shaft, don't give your vehicle too much of a hard time, because that could be a potential spot where you could twist it, and then you're kind of stuck. Diff oils you can check yourself on a flat surface that's nice and level. Just pull the filling bung out, put your finger in, and see what the color's like. See if there's any water in it. That is the best way to check it, and you pretty much have most of the components covered there. There's also greasing points on your uni joints. Those are also worth to check, and the seals as well. You can see if there's any oil splatter going on or any grease splatter. Keep an eye out for it. Shock loading. This is kind of like driving too hard, right? I know it's pretty similar. Shock loading is also with gearing. This is how I crunched my front diff sensor recently. I was going down a hill, and because I was trying to beat someone else's time as a time trial, so it's kind of like racing here. You race people, stuff goes wrong. Going down a hill, I knocked it into first gear low. All that engine force, torque went to the front of the vehicle, all the weight was at the front. The wheels couldn't spin anywhere, and bang, there goes the center diff. Shock loading your vehicle is also another way. It's pretty much like driving too hard. If you're slapping the gears and you're accelerating too hard, things are gonna go. Non-genuine parts is another sure way to break stuff. If you buy the cheaper parts for your vehicle, it doesn't matter if we're talking about a Toyota or a Ford or a GM, Holden, whatever, it doesn't matter what you own. If you don't buy genuine parts, you are subject to things breaking. The aftermarket parts, there's a reason why they're cheaper. It's because they're not tested and trialed, they're not approved by the manufacturer to withstand the amount of load and torque coming through. Now, of course, there are some options that strengthen things, and by all means, buy those parts. But what I'm saying is, don't skim on price to get cheaper parts. And a classic example of that is the front CVs. So many people buy cheap CVs, especially for Hilux. They all snap, guarantee you, when they do proper off-roading. However, if they buy a genuine Toyota one, it lasts so much longer, it can take so much more punishment. Let's take another example. Wayne, on a previous trip, he snapped his rear tail shaft.
What part did you grab that? You said it wasn't spinning.
Oh,
it snapped off in there.
Wow.
He snapped the inner shaft.
Yes. That's what he's done.
Cheap Chinese.
Like I said, there are some improvement parts you can get, but they cost more money. By all means, if they're proved to actually be stronger, use those parts. But apart from that, just stick with genuine parts, and generally you can't go wrong. I hope you found this video useful. 10 ways of breaking your driveline. Hopefully it prevents you from breaking your driveline, or at least, keep yourself mindful of it when you're out four-wheeling next time. If there are any other useful videos I could do for you that are top 10 things or reasons why, comment down below as well, of course. And thank you very much for watching. You can subscribe over here and patreon.com/RonnieDale to support creation of content. And down here is a top 10 essential things for off-roading. Cheers. See you next time.